Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at the Construction Mentor. What are we here to do? We're here to promote the construction industry, the blue collar industry. We want everyone to know what opportunities are out there for people to achieve whatever kind of lifestyle they want, whatever that means. Maybe it's affluency, maybe it's freedom. Maybe you just want to make a good living and go home and put food on the table for your family. If you're already in the industry, how do you get up to that next level? What have people overcome? How can you align with them? And how do you get the tools that you need to take it to the next level? I'm excited because I have somebody finally. We're going back to the interview format. I love bringing people in and hearing about their stories and sharing it with them. For the last 12 weeks, Rusty, I have had to put this on the back burner because I have my own project that I was trying to push through, and I have 2 kids under the age of 2. So, and they were sick. For my daughter, who was 7 months old, and she was sick for 6 straight weeks. So I have my plate a little full, and here I am. I'm coming out with Rusty. So, Rusty, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's nice to be on your show and to have just a normal conversation, right? It's good. It's profitable.
So the first thing at the top of everybody's mind, you're a welder, the wealthy iron worker. That's your handle on Instagram, right?
Yep.
All one word. So the wealthy iron worker, you can't mix that up. And is Rusty your real name, or is that something to do with the metal and the fact that you're handling metal? You're a metal fab guy.
No. My childhood would have wished that it was just a nickname or something like that, but because kids can be mean. But no, it is my real name. Just kind of going through it. I'm second actually. So that's people are like, that's your real name? Is that but yeah, it is.
So is that short for Russell?
No,
it's really just Rusty.
It is. And I'm named after my dad. So I'm the second. And, growing up like that, people would assume that, and they were wrong. And I'm like, and then so when I was younger, it rhymes with some, it's just goofy stuff when you're a kid, just ridiculous things like that.
It had nothing to do with red hair or anything like that.
Nope.
So at no point was this beautiful mane of facial hair that you have. Was it Rusty at all?
It was all black, man. It was all black. It was all black. And then your combination of the trades, getting older, having kids, all of the above just goes, yeah, we're going to age you just a little bit. And so I've had a lot of people say, well, if you would diet or whatever, I don't care about all that stuff. It literally doesn't matter to me.
So you're a family man. You've been a welder for a long time, over 20 years. I think you just told me 23 years.
Yeah.
Is that right? And now you have started a platform that you're posting content now, and you're trying to basically do the same thing that I'm doing, but specifically for the welding trade.
Well, as an iron worker, right? Welding is just one facet of our trade. So it can be structural, it could be ornamental, it could be reinforced, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, to a large degree, there's a lot of welding that goes on. But long and the short is yes. So I've been doing it for 23 years, and I have a website that I have written articles on. It's mine for about almost 7 years now. Come February of next year, it'll be 7 years. And a lot of personal development, leadership, and budgeting, all of this and much more, approached from a trade's perspective. There's a lot that you can find out in work-life balance, all of that stuff you can find. And there's a lot of people talking about it from a white-collar office environment, but there's very little that you can find touching all of those subjects from a blue-collar or, out in the field perspective. And so I've had the website up for a long time now, and I try to release really wordy content. So like probably about the average word count on an article is like 2,400 words. So you're talking like a 10 or 11 minute read. It's nothing, I do have some shorter form stuff, but you're there to learn. You're there to read up. You're there to, as Justin Sullivan says over there on the West Coast, you're there to level up, if you will. And so, but I know that there's a lot of people in the trades who are going to listen to a podcast as opposed to stop and read an article. Okay.
Sure.
And that between that and having too many people tell me that you should start a podcast is, the reason why I started the podcast, because I'm fully, well aware that that's going to be a form of media that are going to consume as opposed to reading a substantive article, if you will. And
sure.
That's fine.
Yeah, well,
that's cool.
You can listen to it while you're on the way to work. That's why I try to post my episodes at 4:30. We all know the guys in the trades. are specifically up a little earlier. I think it's a good point that you touch on, that we need education for people in the trades to kind of get, how do they price jobs? How do they make a profit if they want to do their own side work or want to spin off and do their own business? And I think the spot that people miss the most, if you look at some of my posts, and I get some wars going on in my posts for people that, talk about the trades and they don't have longevity and you can't live in it your whole life. You're going to ruin your body and yada, yada. It's like, whoa. Wait a minute. First of all, it's not your grandfather's industry. But second of all, who says you have to be doing grunt work your entire life? Like, there's no growth in the construction industry or in the trades, right? I know plenty of people that I've had in this podcast, by the way, that own their own businesses and they're doing millions a year, but they actually sub out the office stuff because they don't want to do that. They want to make the money, but they like to be in the field. You know what I mean? Yep. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have the education and in a format that they wanted to digest it from. Like they want to hear from somebody. Yep. Like the wealthy iron worker, right? So that's awesome that you do that. And where are you exactly now? Are you working for somebody else? Are you working for yourself? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so after a 4-year stint of doing business development, I am back in the field. Superintendent, running work for a good friend of mine, and kind of a smaller outfit, but that's okay. He prefers a more familial touch, which is nice, in regards to that, especially if you worked for a larger corporation and you miss that, let's say, personal touch. So I'm doing, a lot of that. Still teaching an apprenticeship as well. And, I do a myriad of things, actually, weld testing at the hall, all that stuff. But it's been about, and, unfortunately for me, I started back in the field after a 4-year, hiatus in the hottest month of the year. And it was just, muscling through all of that and getting back to it. And, but it's been good. And, I couldn't ask for a better company to work for, at least at this particular point, nor, a place to work or some guys to work around. It's been a very eventful.
So time. Rusty, tell me, what was BD, business development, versus what a super's like? Because I think there's a lot of young people out there that they like the idea of rising up into a management position, even something above a foreman, but they don't necessarily like the idea of being a white collar guy per se, and they don't understand what a super, like an outside super or road super or something like that is. I assume that's what you were talking about. They don't assume what that role is. So what's the BD versus that? And if you could touch on compensation too, that'd be a bonus.
Sure. And I'm actually glad that you brought up earlier. You mentioned how people think there's dead ends and there's no way to rise up or whatever. It couldn't be further from the truth. And the major reason why that is because the latter half of the baby boomers are retiring. And as an industry, we haven't done anything, for the most part. I'm generalizing, but for the most part, we haven't done anything from a recruitment/retention issue for the past 10 to 15 years. I know, because that's the reality of someone my age. The next 10 years are going to be really rough on all the trades, because you're going to have this. We've already got this age gap. Now we have to deal with it. And this is not something we can just bring bodies in. But from a business development perspective, we had this initiative where it was, okay, let's talk to guys in the field, that when we talk to, whether it's a customer or a facility or, engineering manager, whoever it happens to be, you're able to talk and walk the walk. And so you're taking a tradesman, if you will, and you're giving them new tools in a toolbox to then have that conversation. And that's the way that I think that some of the younger people might want to look at it as. It's not as if you're hanging up your tools, or, you're coming out of the field and you're going to be a quote unquote white collar. You're adding additional tools in your toolbox so that when you're going to want to continue to progress in your field. And I can tell you this too, for those younger people who have that mindset, like, I don't want to be in the office or whatever the case may be. I don't want to do something different, or I just want to do this. In 20 years time, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. And so your change, your perspective, your direction, all of that may very well make a significant seismic shift as you are advancing in your career. And you'll look at it and you'll say, okay, well, this is something different, something new, benefits and the like that. The unique thing about being in a union as an iron worker, you I have seen guys that are at the lowest echelon from an apprentice perspective, and then I've seen guys who own businesses. There is no ceiling, as it were. I've seen them fill roles in safety manager positions. I've seen them fill roles in project manager positions. I've seen them fill roles in business development. And so the sky really is the limit in that regard, as far as you're building your reputation, using those tools in that toolbox to then rise up. And then basically there's a saying that goes around. It's like, the position is made for the person. No, people make positions for people. Companies make positions for people. It's not the other way around. If you got a stellar reputation, you're always wanting to learn, you're on time or even early, right? And, you have this stellar reputation, the likelihood that you're going to get gobbled up and they're going to find positions for you, wherever it happens to be, is increasing dramatically.
Rusty, are you a football fan?
I do not watch sports at all.
Okay. So
it just, I don't have, all the time in the day, when we're working or whatever, it's like, okay, family man, that kind of stuff.
I'm starting to get away from it, but Bill Belichick, he's the coach of the Patriots, for years. And, he was famous for doing just that, just what you just said. And I use the analogy all the time, but he just got good players. His game plan and how he played the game, he had to get the talent first, and then he figured out how he wanted to play the game. And I think if there's one thing about construction, if I defined a project manager, or I defined a super, or I defined an estimator, or I defined a foreman, that role may change based on who that person is and what their strengths are. And they get put in the situations where they can exploit their strengths the best, right? I could have 10 project teams and my role will change every single time because I'm high level and I try to be versatile and I try to fill the gaps and put people in their positions to succeed. But it's what you just said. And I think that's unique about the construction industry. It's whatever your personality is, whatever you want to do, and wherever you want your career to go, based on your performance and what you bring to the table, that can happen for you.
Yep, absolutely. And we have essentially stigmatized the trades for about 4 decades now, and now we're it seemed like we had band-aids on gushers, right? Because you still had a lot of older heads that were in there, and companies didn't want to train up anybody or whatever the case may be. And now the cracks are so massive that we're having to deal with this fundamental problem. And this is not an easy fix. This is not something you just throw bodies at. We don't take care of that problem there. It takes years to build experience in, and contractors are just as culpable in this problem as anyone else, because for years I don't have time. I can't afford to train apprentices. And it's like, no, you can't afford not to. This is the problem of your making it's going to bite you. And so we've been talking about this, and, back to the BD or the superintendent role, if you will, it will take time, right, to fill those roles. We're having a hard time finding people just at the journeyman level or even apprentice to bring them in, because the trades have been so stigmatized. And so when you start talking about a business development role or a superintendent role, right, whether it's a site superintendent on a job, or you could be, we'll say, a traveling one, right, visiting multiple jobs, I think it caters to exactly what you just said, where it's, what is this person's strength? And then we create a position, if you will, for that person. Like, you have a talent that I want to capture for my company, for the customers, whatever the case may be. We're going to tailor this role to some degree to those strengths that you have, and then go on through the compensation piece of it. I was having a conversation with another foreman or general foreman for another contractor just today. What you are seeing played out, and what I'm noticing, is that even at a journeyman rate, you want to get somebody into key supervision roles, you are going to pay. And there are contractors out there that are desperately looking for those people to pay them and put them in. And so this idea,
ahead, Rusty, throw a number out there. What's the market have, Rusty?
I have seen, I'll tell you right now, I've had guys talk to me, and they're like, hey man, this company over here just offered me, and this is on top of the pay. So I don't know if you've ever dived into the union versus non-union pay structure, but from a union iron worker, I've seen guys in their pocket make $100,000 easy, just in the pocket. Their benefits are on top of that, by the way. That's there's a whole podcast episode that I put on it's YouTube, Spotify, whatever you want to listen to, about that difference, because the major difference is, for those who might listen to this episode, when you're in the non-union world, you start with an amount and you chip your way down. You take away from that total amount, your health care, your retirement or whatever. But when you talk to union craftsmen, iron workers, pipe fitters, electricians, whatever, the number they give you is the starting point, and everything builds up from there. So in other words, it might say, well, I make $40 an hour. You do the math, you figure that out. But then there's X amount of dollars that goes into their health and welfare. And then there's X amount of dollars that goes into their pension fund. And there's X amount of dollars that goes into annuity or 401k, if you will. And so we build up from there. And so I know guys, like I talk to people and they're like, yeah, I'm making, probably $40 an hour, $45 an hour or whatever. And then it's even more than that. Depends on where you're at in the country, right? Obviously you're making more in the Northeast than you are or in the Midwest or whatever the case may be. But I have seen guys that come out and they make a very good living, and rightfully so, especially if you've got 20 years of experience and you got 20 some years to actually give in this industry. You are a diamond in the rough, because there's so few people like that.
And I think, so that comment happens all the time, right? I'll have people challenge the salaries that I post, and I'm like, you guys don't understand. These aren't salaries, okay? It's supplemental. So when I get my paycheck, like you said, benefits, when you get a job with benefits, people think that like that's all part of the package. No, that gets extracted from your paycheck. So if I get a paycheck for $10, before I get that check, or before that the money that's for, that's $10 minus $1 for health, minus $1 for 401k, and then what I get is $8, right? I don't really get 10 in the check. What we're saying, and what Rusty just said, for the union benefits, is it's supplemental, right? So instead of getting $8, you're getting that $10 plus $1 for health, plus $1 for retirement or a pension or an annuity or whatever that is. So that's why, and people will say, well, you can't include the benefits package. That's not the right. And it's like, why not? Why not? Because that's not money that comes out of your pocket, number one. And number two, it's money going into an investment account. So why wouldn't you include that in your compensation when you're talking about it, right? I posted a video of this Italian kid from New York on the beach, and they asked him what he made for the year, and it was $300,000. So I did the math, and if you include his package, he would get to $240,000 just on his benefits package and base pay, right?
Yep.
So to get to 300, what would he have to do that? One Saturday, 50 weeks. So if he worked 50 straight 6-day weeks, he could do it, right? So I'm not saying that that's easy. I'm not suggesting that's a lifestyle. Right. I'm just saying the math works out to make $300,000 that easy as a union electrician in New York, right? Yep. So in the Virginia area, not top of the cost of living scale, right? I don't think it's low either, right? It's probably somewhere in the middle, I would imagine. So $100,000 a year plus benefits and plus a retirement is, that's a good living, and that's just on the base, right? So what was a BD role like for you? Was that commission based? Was that salary? What did that look like?
So it was not commission based. It was just, okay, here's what you make. And I said, okay, fine. And so they gave you an amount and you go out, and basically I was doing it actually, for multiple contractors, just going out and, from an industrial maintenance perspective, talking to facilities, talking to those industrial places, and trying to make the connection, right? Give you the warm and fuzzy, if you will. Listen, I can tell you what I would do in this instance, because if the roles are reversed, I would be doing this job. And so I'm not sitting here trying to, sell you a product that I wouldn't buy or that I've never done before. I'm, boots on the ground, would sit here and, fabricate this up, rig this out, move this machine, whatever it happens to be. And so we would do that. And it was an interesting, experience, I'll say, because there's a thing that you do that if you haven't done it before, or you lose that perspective, or if you've never had that perspective, then you don't have that appreciation of it. Same thing with the benefits that you were just talking about. When I teach apprentices, I say, I go to the dry erase board and I write it out. Here's how much the scale is. All right. Oh, but by the way, because you don't see this, because these are already structured in from a negotiation perspective, I put this and put this and put this. I'm like, so you don't actually just make this. This is what you really make. This is what the contractor pays on your behalf. And so that same perspective, I can take it into the BD role, because I didn't know anything about it. I'd gone out with salesmen before on different jobs and said, this is how I would do this job, and this is what I would do, and this is how many guys I would use, and so on and so forth. But then when I'm the one going out, and I'm not even really just bidding on the job, I'm just saying, allow me to introduce you to a contractor that can take care of what you're looking to get taken care of. And I know that they're finding it just as hard to find contractors, because there's so many people that are retiring out of the trades, and so the contractors base that you might have had a connection with are probably even more swamped, if you will, because they're trying to fill in all of this stuff, and everybody wants somebody with 20 years of experience, and guess what? They're all working, man.
Yeah, and nobody's out of work. It's funny. So I posted something a couple weeks ago that got quite contentious, but it was funny because both people that love Trump and hate Trump liked it. And then people that love Trump and hate Trump also hated it. So it was just funny to watch, because I don't think anybody really grasped what I was saying. Or a lot of people didn't. And it was that, a lot of people, they think that either immigrants are coming in and stealing jobs, or they think that if we block them from coming in, then we're not going to have anybody to do the jobs. So it was like, you're pissing off people on both sides. And I'm like, guys, first of all, 60 million immigrants, whether they're legal, illegal, whatever you want to call it, white, brown, doesn't matter the color, 60 million are in America, and only 2.5 million are in construction. So they're taking jobs. They're not taking these ones, number one. And number two, you can't just walk in and start ironworking. Like, you can't, you need 20 years of experience to be an expert. You need decades to be an expert. And even if you don't want to do the trade your entire life, if you want to become a super, become a project manager, become a business development, a salesperson, that's, people like the visual of taking people golfing and on boats and stuff like that. The best people that do that, the people that I know, the best in the industry, didn't go to college. They spent the time in the trade, because they know what their knees feel like to turn a wrench under a sink. They know what it feels like to feel hot as hell in Virginia welding in the summer. They know what those, you know what I mean? They know what those things feel like, because they've actually done it, and they can speak to the nuances of it. And when you're a client, whether you're a contractor, right? I'm a GC. I know a little bit about ironwork and a little bit about welding, but I'm never going to know what you know. I'm not going to get that depth. What I'm looking for, and even if I was a client trying to hire somebody, I'm looking for that expert who's actually done it. Who can I trust to be telling me the truth and to adequately manage my expectations? That's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for that expert. And you're not going to get somebody just walking in off the street. It's going to be somebody that's been doing it for a long time. And that pays. That pays. You can't pay enough for that right now.
You can't. So you can't replace experience. And I think this experiment that we've been on for probably about 4 decades now, of believing that we're going to offshore any and all training / investment into a third party, I think that model probably needs to die, and it probably needs to die 1,000 deaths quickly. Because what companies find out, and I'm not talking about apprenticeships, it's not what I mean. I'm talking about this idea that you can go to college and get a good job, and then you come out, you're like, nope, that's not happening. And then the companies realize, oh, we got to train them up anyway. And so companies used to look at people as an investment, and now it's like, well, I'll just offshore all that training that I think I'm going to need. No, that's not going to work, and it hasn't been working. And so where the model is the best, especially from a trades perspective, is the registered apprenticeship program, where we are a partner in that regard with the contractors and training them up. But this experiment that we're going to offshore that stuff, you cannot replace experience. And this idea that education and youthful vigor is going to replace experience is all you really need to know is this: when you look at somebody that's just coming in from, I got a college degree, I don't care what it happens to be in, because I've got one too. How much do they pay that person when they first start in? And how much are they paying people who are the salty supers on the job that are 60 years old and they do not want you to retire? How much is that person getting paid?
Mm.
Now that is the writing on the wall, and that'll tell you where do they, what do they surface level say? We value education, education, education. Yeah, but what do you pay for? You're paying for that experience, and you do not want to. You want to start to stave off that change for as long as possible. And one of the ways that you do that is to pay that guy or that gal, whoever happens to be, all of that money because they don't want you to leave. You cannot replace experience.
So Rusty, I'm gonna one up you. Okay, I got 2 degrees, and you know how many clients have asked me about my degrees? 0. You know how many times I've referenced the course material in my book? 0. And it's funny because I was just at a work conference. You know, I work for a national GC, $12 billion a year. And one of the discussions was mission critical facilities. We can't find enough people to do them right now. It's not a question of getting the work. It's we don't have the mouths to eat the food, right? There's so much food on the table. We can't eat it fast enough. And I raised my hand and I just said, listen, you know, why, if we know, I am unaware of one person that's ever left college, walked into my office and been able to just produce day one, even forget about trade work, even just in the construction, you know, RFIs and submittals and the paperwork, they don't know how to do it, right? We know that the best education that they're going to get is from us. The guy even said it. He was like, we're taking internships and we're having them do their degrees at night so that we can train them. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why are we even making that a requirement if we know that we're the best source of education, number one, and number two, what did we just do? We just gave them their biggest bill. Even a state school will cost 40 grand, which will cost over 100 grand on a 6.5% interest rate. That's $250 a month. We just made their cost of living more expensive. Now we got to pay them just to train them. What are we doing? Why would we make that a requirement? It doesn't make sense. And he was like, no, you're 100% right. That's why we don't require college degrees anymore.
It needs to die 1,000 deaths. I mean, I went back. First off, you're going to get, it's just like anything else in life. You're going to get out of something what you put into it. And so when I got my CWI for the local where I could test welders and do a whole bunch of other things with it, actually, I was like, you know, I like formal education. I like to learn. I'm a very curious person. I wouldn't write and do the things that I do if I wasn't. And so when I went back for a civil engineering, I finished up an associates in civil engineering technology and mechanical engineering technology. But while I was doing that, I finished up a construction management bachelor's degree. And not because somebody said you got to use it or whatever. I just want to be able to say I did it. So what? It hasn't helped me out. I mean, I enjoy having it, but it never comes up in conversation. And so it's like, I'm with you. Why do we, I tell people all the time, young, whatever, and somebody's coming to me and they're like, you know, what advice do you have? Whatever. I'm like, do you know what you want to do for a living? Like, no. All right, go get a job.
Yeah. What? You know what I'm interested in, Rusty? You know what matters to me more than that degree is that beard you got and those probably paws that you got from doing ironwork for so long. That'll tell me more that you know what you're talking about than something in a picture frame on a wall.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds great. I mean, it's nice that you've done it or whatever. That's great. But I had a professor. He was teaching one of the classes now, and he's back actually as a project manager. And he would have assistant project managers come out, even engineers, fresh on the job, and they'd say, "Do you have any advice for me?" He said, "Yeah, sure do." That salty superintendent over there, that 60-year-old guy who's gruff, he's like, "You'll learn. Shut your mouth and listen to him. You'll learn more from him in 6 months than you will the 4 years you just got done doing and coming in here." And they're like, "What?" And I want to hear it. He's like, "I'm telling you now, you asked me for some advice. This is what I'm telling you right here. This is what you're going to want to listen to." So we do our young people too. We do our young people in this country a disservice because we lie to them about a whole smattering of things. And this idea that you got to go to college, you get a good job, saddle them with debt, your cost of living is automatically increased. We make economic slaves out of them, if you will. And we've told them a whole bunch of bullcrap. What we ought to be talking to them about, because you were mentioning earlier about people coming up to the trades or in their business, is don't follow your passion. Follow where the opportunity is and bring your passion to succeed along with you. And that will serve you very, very well. And it's nice to, you know, have an engaging conversation with someone else who sees this, who sees the validity in, well, talking and then pushing back. I've seen on Reddit. I've been on Reddit for a little bit now, and the people are like, how is it that people are making this much money? I don't think it's true. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, it's true. I've seen it. I talk to people. I know for a fact that it's like that. And they just can't believe it. They're because right, wrong, or different, they're probably, I think it was Mark Twain that said it's easier to fool a man than to convince a man he's been fooled. And that's the reality. They're fooled. They have been fooled for a long time, thinking you got to go to college, get a good job. This is where you got to get the money at. This is what you got to do. This is the roadmap that I took. Therefore, everybody else has to take it. And wait a minute, you're telling me that somebody that came through an apprenticeship but doesn't have, debt that they got to pay, and they're 4, 6, 7, 8, 10 years in this trade, they're making that much money? That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, I bet it doesn't, because you have been fooled for a long time. And I think Mark Twain was right. I think it's easier to fool a man than it is to convince him that he's been fooled. And that's exactly what's going on.
Man, amen. Amen to everything you just said. I agree with it. I agree with it wholeheartedly. And I think, that's the big thing. I hate the expression, love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And your objective in life shouldn't be to take it easy or to be happy or to just do things that make you happy. I love working with young men, specifically young boys, making them into men. I love coaching youth football. And I do that, right? I do that, and that has an impact, but I've developed a skill set, number one, that allows me to provide for my family in a way that most other people cannot. I'm in a situation where I'm, in the top 5%, maybe top 1% of my age bracket. And that's great for my family, right? I can provide a life for them. But at the same time, I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is what? That's empowering people. That's opening doors for people, yanking them through the doors if they want a little help through the door, and having a direct impact to try to bring the same type of opportunity to other people. Do I love putting up walls and dealing with the headaches that I have to deal with as a construction manager and as a general contractor? I mean, a little bit. I definitely like it because I grew up in it. My dad was a pipe welder in Boston, right? I kind of don't know anything else. But I mean, would I rather be coaching football? Would I rather be doing something else? Maybe. But because I have this skill set and I can pass it on to other people and I can power other people to, bring those good things to their life, that's a passion, right? So, and I get to get paid a good amount of money, while I serve my passion. So to go back to what you said, it's like a career in the trades or in construction or whatever kind of blue collar industry. Plumbers don't love the smell of poop in a pipe, but they may love what it enables them to do.
That's right.
Right. So,
that's right.
And that's just, I don't mean to pick on the plumbers. You never share a bag of chips with a plumber, my dad always said, but but it's just it's the easy example. Everybody knows what crap smells like, right? And they make a lot of money. That maybe that's why they're the highest paid trade. So, I would love to take a step back and just go back to the beginning, Rusty. What was the beginning like for you? What were you like in high school? Normal kid, suburb? Did you have anything going on? Was college, was it for you? Obviously, you're well educated. It sounds like you got maybe a couple degrees. Maybe I assumed you only had one. What was it like for you in the beginning? What drew you to the industry, or was it not the industry right away? Did you do something else for a while?
Yeah. So anybody who knew me as a younger person would not. I've had multiple people say, "Well, I never would have thought that you'd be in the trades. I never thought you'd be an iron worker at all. I thought you'd do something with computers or something like that." And I've tried to look back and go, well, I wonder why they thought that. But suburbs, where we're at in what we call the 7 cities, Southeast Virginia. We don't even have counties. The county is the city, like the whole entire thing. And so, we're doing, going to high school, and it's hard to imagine, right, that there was a time when I was clean shaven. But in high school I was, because we had a Marine Corps ROTC program, JROTC program. And so my 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, I was doing that. We had a rifle team and a drill team, and I was doing really well at that, especially the rifle team. And senior year, I was like, nope, I'm not going to join the Corps. I'm not doing that. And when I graduated high school, I went to go, there's a lot of shipyards around here. So I went to go work for a company that was the next door neighbor, or across the street neighbor, rather. He was working for one of those companies and was like, hey, you can come over here and work with us. I said, okay, fine. So I started doing that. And then out of that, they also had a telecom division, building cell towers and things like that. And so I went to go work for that division when they got a little slow on the shipyard side of things. And that was a 2 year. I worked for them on a year and a half, another 6 months working for another contractor out of town.
Hmm.
And that's where I got, the heights, and we were doing some strong. It's not an apples to apples comparison, right? Because cell towers are totally different, but heights, rigging, welding, etc. And then after that, I was like, man, I had a young kid at the time. I said, I'm coming home, and knew somebody. They were like, look, you should go down here and join the ironworkers. And that's what I did. I went down, took an aptitude test, went to work, never looked back. And so when you look at the way and by the way, while I was working, for the telecom part of things, I was taking classes because that's all I ever heard in high school. You got to go to college, you got to get a job. And then the as if to say it was less than desirable. It's like, or you could join the military. And these were the two options that, a guidance counselor, think about that name, guidance counsel. You're supposed to provide guidance and counsel. And this is what we do. You don't even know what opportunities are out there because you're telling people they got to go to college. And now student debt is $1.75 trillion. Like, what are we doing to our young people? So I did do that, but then I was taking classes because I got swept up in the whole, thing too. But something had to break. I had a kid, was working, can't do school. So work was paying, whatever bills I had at the time as a young person. So college went by the wayside. So I picked it up later on.
Mm.
But
so I was just gonna ask you, a lot of people say that you got to work to the bone and that you never get time off or you're light off and, you can't control when you work and blah, blah, blah. What has that been like for you? Has that enhanced your ability for family life? Have you always been employed because of your skill set? How much of that do you attribute to the union? All the above.
So I have, I've pretty much, if I went without a job, it was because I wanted to. My wife and I have been married for 14 years, and it is feast or famine in the trades, to some degree, right? You'll have times where I can just remember a coworker one time, he said something to the effect of, I feel like I'm on 610s for life, because that was the job that, that was just the schedule or whatever the case may be. And so there are feast or famine periods. And oddly enough, sometimes it follows the political spectrum, right? Companies are like, well, we don't want to, go cut loose a lot of money because we don't know the policies and this and that and all that kind of stuff. But for me, as an industrial based iron worker, it's been very profitable for me. My wife has been a stay at home mom the entire time we've been married. We married 14 years. And then when my daughter, who is now 12, I've got an adult kid. But when she was born, my wife wanted to stay at home. And so that feast or famine mentality for me is like, yeah, you got to try to find a balance. But I mean, just when you think you found it, it's going to go away because there's different projects and you got different seasons of life. And I think that's one of the things when it comes to perspective. I think that a lot of people miss this need that you have for a perspective, right? If what my wife wants to do is stay at home and homeschool our kids and give them my kids have been all over this country and field trips and all that kind of stuff. And so, if that's the kind of life that my wife and my children are wanting, well, then I'm going to provide that. And so, being in the union obviously has been very profitable for me because, my wife doesn't work, but I do. And so I've got retirement, I've got healthcare coverage for my family. I've got the ability to go out and work, and there is a skill set, kind of back to some of it has been because I've been in the union, but if I wanted to go get another job tomorrow, I could. You build your reputation. I tell young people, like when I'm having a conversation with them, like, look, be the first one to come back from break and be the last one to go to break. Be there early, set your reputation and build it. And so part of it has been because of, being in the union and, kind of knowing a lot of different people. And then the other part of it has been because of the mentality that I attempt to bring to, what I go to work with every day, which is early is on time, and I'm here to do a good job and go home, and I want everybody to be safe. And I'm not going to sit here and fuss because it doesn't do any good, right? You can sit here and fuss, but what does it do? So I try to bring a balanced perspective in to my just where I work at and what I happen to do and who I'm having to be working around, so that, maybe one day someone's got some questions they want to ask. I try to, you were talking about working with young boys and bringing them up to men. I have the similar bent for that. I really like teaching apprentices. I like to, we've had a mentoring problem in this industry for a long time, and
that was my first episode. Just so
that was your first episode.
Yeah, it was on why do we in the construction industry suck at mentorship programs? Because usually it's what you just said earlier. It was just go by osmosis, go stand next to the crusty old guy, and you're going to absorb all the wealth of knowledge and decades of knowledge. And it doesn't work if you don't want to mentor somebody. If somebody doesn't want to be mentored, or they don't want to mentor somebody, it's never going to work. Right. So
all the more, just one more reason why we're going to get on very well, because you know who Mark Breslin is?
No.
All right. So Mark Breslin, he wrote, there's a bunch of different books that he's written, like Survival of the Fittest, but his most recent one, I did a book review on it on my website, but it's called The 5-Minute Foreman. And in it, I like it because it gives like these little 5-minute exercises. Like, here's something that you could work on for 5 minutes that makes you a better individual from a people management aspect. You start working into, even at the foreman level, but even more than that, how are your soft skills? How are your people skills? How are you whatever? And in it, he describes having a conversation with some people in a room, and he goes, how many of you at some point can look back and say, I was mentored by somebody at some point in time or whatever? And about 70% of the hands go up in the air. And, he's like, okay. And then he goes, all right, how many of you are actively mentoring right now? And 30% of the hands are up. And he's like, this is an issue. And so when I think about that, I go, okay. And I've heard older people say this all the time. Oh, those younger people don't want to do this, and they don't want to do this, and they don't want to do that. I'm like, all right, would you say that you're the more mature one? Yeah. Would you say you're more experienced? Yeah. All right. Well, find a way to connect and break through that ice or whatever, facade that you think that you're putting up in front of them, saying it's on them. It's on them. It's like, yeah, go take a nice long look in the mirror, because the mentoring problem is probably stemming from you, older, more experienced person, not the other way around. And so it's very frustrating to see that. And so I might be just one person, but I really enjoy teaching apprentices. And if you want to learn, we can work together. I can tell you that right now. So
yeah, I had an example story that I always think of is I was on a roofing crew when I was in high school, and I showed up, and my dad was a union pipe fitter. I knew jeans, boots, tucked in on time, shoes tied, no coffee in my hand, ready to go. Right.
Yeah.
5 or 15 minutes early, whatever it is. My buddy, my best friend at the time, showed up, sneakers, gym shorts, and a tank top. And he looked like a complete asshole. But we were 14, 15 years old. And the difference is that I was told that. He was never told that. So how can you expect somebody to be aware of your standards and live up to those standards if they've never been exposed to them? Maybe you have to be that person to tell them. Right? Maybe that's the opportunity for them. You're the person. Maybe God put you in that situation, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, put you in that situation because they need you. Right. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid to be there for, no hands in your pocket. Stop looking at your cell phone. Just write things down. These are things that I was beat into my head before I can even remember being able to write things down. But that's the privilege that I had. Right. So I definitely think that there's people that are in the industry, a lot of dusty old guys, that they get upset just when people don't inherently have those things, and they don't want to mentor people. And no. I also hear it in the other direction. Right. I've been teaching in after school programs for years, and I hear a lot of complaints that, I sit there on my hands because nobody tells me what to do. Nobody goes out of it. Nobody shows me the time of day. So I've had some content where I say, okay, how do you show somebody that you are somebody worth mentoring, right? You got to shine that light. How do you shine that light so that the old foreman or the old super wants to take you under the wing, so that even if you don't know, they'll say, okay, hey kid, come over here. Here's how you do it. right?
Yeah,
Or
that's a good
you know what I
perspective.
mean? So what's some easy things that without even knowing anything in construction, you know, and I'd love to hear your perspective if you have anything. My easy low hanging fruit is clean shaven, cut your nails, no holes in your jeans, walk with intent, always have something in your hand. Don't let it be a cell phone. Don't have your hands in your pockets. Those are some easy things that I think anybody can do. If you have anything off the top of your head, I'd love to hear it.
I think, yeah, I think if you operate on the premise that early is on time, right? I cannot tell you how many, let's say, Minutemen, like they're always they always seem to have something always happens to them rather than it being their fault. If you operate on a premise that early is on time, if you carry yourself, what you're talking about is the way you carry yourself. I can, kind of wrap that up into, I think that's right. Can you stay busy? Can you just clean? Right. These are the things that someone looks at and goes, I like what he's doing. He or she, I like what they're doing. They're staying busy, even though someone hasn't told them anything. They're trying not to be just like this obvious thing. I'm just going to stand around with my hands in my pockets or my thumb up my rear because no one's told me. Well, have you asked? And you might have, right? You might have asked somebody, and you got that crotchety old man, get the hell out of here. I ain't got time to teach an apprentice.
Yeah.
But there are other people out there who are endeavoring to do. And I'll tell you something else too. If there's a skill, and however small it might seem, if there's something, I can remember coming up and how apprentices who were tenacious would say, no, that's for me. That's my job. Grinding. No, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I'm doing that. Take it out. You'll take the work out of your hands.
Yeah.
That's a tenacious person. That'll serve that person well. And we don't have I don't see as many people coming in that are tenacious, but that's a skill that you can learn. It's not something that you're endowed with, that you're just going to, all right, hello, I'm born with it and I'm going to work through it. Tenacious is something you learn that usually helps you overcome a lack of talent. And so
I'd say tenacity is a muscle, right?
Yeah.
You work it out, you develop it, you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So
if you
go stay tenacious.
If you go to, because Google changes their algorithm a little bit. But if you go to like DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever, and you just typed in talent versus tenacity, you're going to come across an article that I wrote on Google's first page. Same thing with passion versus opportunity, because too many people that are talking heads, they just bring up this, you use your, never give up on your dreams and, pursue your passion. I'm like, yeah, that's bad career advice. How many musicians, sports stars, athletes, actors, actresses, for every one that makes it, there's a million who don't. Are you going to tell those same people to follow your, follow opportunity instead? And so when you have an opportunity, right, carry yourself well. More to your point, I would say early is on time. Give yourself plenty of time, dressed out, ready to go. You're there, attentive. Being punctual. You would not believe how many people get to stay on the job merely because they're punctual. They're on time or early. And in another life, in previous years, their lack of skill might have, it might have been weeded out because of that. But because they're punctual now, and the industry is such to the degree that we're in dire straits, they're allowed to stay on the job. It's crazy.
Well,
and
I can tell you as a GC, and now that I work across the country, because it's not all like the Northeast corridor from basically Virginia up to Boston, right? Punctuality is huge for me as a general contractor. I have a client to answer to, and if people aren't on site when I tell them they're going to be there, they want to know what the hell's going on, and I look incompetent for it, right? Yeah. So it goes even up to my level as well. And it's funny. So two examples of when I wasn't punctual. In high school, I was working at a sheet metal shop. When my dad was leaving, he's like, and my dad also worked at the shop, and he's like, you better get your ass out the door, man. And so I get there. I get to the shop at 6:02. He was standing on the loading dock with 10 other guys with their arms folded. And he's like, why don't you come back tomorrow when you're willing to show up on time? Right. Second time that I did something to get in trouble with what you just said. So you're a union guy, right? So I grew up in a union scenario, but I also grew up in a situation where, man, when I was working residential construction growing up, there wasn't something to do. I'd literally rake the owner of the company's yard, right? I'd take everything out of the truck. I'd wipe it down. I'd put it back in the truck and organize it, like literally anything, right? I took that into a commercial project a commercial construction project in Boston, union job. And I'm cleaning up at the end of the project, and I'm a young super, got a broom in my hand, and a local 223 laborer comes up to me, with the Irish accent, and he goes, "Boy, you better put that fucking broom down before I break it up your arse. You don't take my fucking work." So, if he threatened to stick the broom up my ass because I was taking his work, right? Obviously, you can't just do somebody's work in a union situation. And I just think that's a funny story that I always like to tell. He wasn't really mad at me. He knew that I was trying to do the right thing and I was trying to be productive, but you can't do work for some of the union guys sometimes. So I was like, I like sharing that story.
That's funny. I like that.
So, well, we're almost on an hour. I don't want to go too long, and this might even have to break into a second episode here. But Rusty, is there anything else that you were hoping that we'd touch on, or that you want to talk about is available on your platform, or that, if anybody wants to come to find you, what kind of value you can bring to them?
Yeah, I think that contractors. So I've been muscling this around in my head for a little bit now, and I think that contractors need to realize the severity of the situation at hand. They need to realize that more, back to Mark Breslin's point where he talks about you'll handle millions of dollars of, when it comes to the cost of projects. Mm-hmm. And we give almost no training to any of them, foreman on up. And you're expected to, baptism by fire, if you will, and going into it. Mm-hmm. And it has worked up into a certain point. But I don't think that the same way we've been working is going to continue to work. We're going to have to be very intentional about how we recruit and how we retain people in this industry. If you think about it like this, 25 years ago, we were accessing the internet via dial-up. Dial-up. Now, there's an entire economy online. So what are we as an industry doing to try to attract and recruit and retain people? We're not doing much of anything, to be honest with you. And it is. I would say that the only real reason that we're seeing an actual influx of people, and I see it from an apprenticeship perspective, 30 and younger, right, is primarily driven because the cracks in the narrative that you got to go to college to get a good job are too big to ignore now. People are using social media, TikTok and YouTube and everything else to say, this is how much I owe. I've been paying for this many years. This doesn't work. It's not blah, blah, blah. And everybody is going, we're starting to see. And so us as the legacy industry, I call the construction industry the legacy industry, been around for a while. So used to people just kind of knocking on our door, that we're seeing some people come into this industry. But it's only really, I think, because of the fact that that narrative is starting to have, sort of like Swiss cheese. And you're starting to see people like yourself talking about how much money you can make in the trades. And you're starting to see some value. And so the trades, I've got an article coming out here probably within the next month or two that's going to talk about a prediction. And what it's going to ultimately detail is if we're not very intentional from a contractor industry perspective about actually recruiting and retaining, because we've been underpaid for a long, long time. And if we're not intentional about doing this, then the likelihood that you're going to have your doors still open is going to be very difficult, because you think that you're not going to have to invest into people and attract them or whatever. I'm just going to use headhunters to, recruitments. That industry is going to boom. But you know what they're going to do? They're going to pull from the same smaller, diminishing pool of people. And it's just a bidding war at that point. That's fine. That'll be good for the superintendent that's going to get poached, and now he's going to make, more money than he's ever made. That doesn't help the industry and the contractors in general. And I would like to ask, like, we need to have roundtable discussions. And I would also say to take a nice look at what you actually get by being a signatory contractor with a union. when you type in benefits of being a union contractor into Google, my website comes up. My article comes up the first one. I just listed out 10. I could list it out many more. But there's a whole list of things that you get. First off, willing partners in this investment. And you're trying to procure work and you need to invest people. We have to think differently in the way that we're recruiting and retaining and looking at the next generation. And I say this as somebody, I'm not saying that I live in a glass house and not throwing stones, because people that are my age, we're the ones that are going to have to make all of this work. We have to make this work. We're going to have to try and plug people in and invest in people and give and give and give. And you run the risk of running people like that ragged, because you're going to overly depend on them while not equipping them to invest in other people. And that means it's going to take a significant investment from companies to be intentional about investing, whether it's from their, raising up apprentices or, however that turns out to be. I don't think we're having those conversations, and we definitely need to. We definitely need to be having those conversations, because what we're going to find is we're going to have like this population implosion, if you will, from the trades. And that's going to vibrate out through probably the economy, actually.
Listen, I agree 100% with everything that you just said. And from my perspective, as somebody, I grew up in the trades, and now I've been in the general contractor, the major big boy, 800-pound gorilla contractor GC world for the last 10 years. I was just in a conference in Atlanta, and we have 4,500 people in our company. Top 150 executives were at this conference. 80% of the room is over 60.
Yeah.
Been in those spots since the 90s, since I was a kid, and so it's not even just about the trades. It's like companies may literally implode because they're not going to have the leadership. It's not even just at the apprenticeship at the trade level. You're going all the way up to the general contractors and all the way up to the client reps and the owners reps and all these positions that, young people don't even think of when they think of construction, because they just think boots and jeans and people in the field.
That's it.
So what does that mean for you, though? That means that if there was ever an opportunity, if to use a baseball analogy, you got fat pitches coming down the middle. Like you said, 1 out of 1 million musicians makes it, right?
That's right.
Everybody in construction makes it. If you want it and you put the hard work in, and the harder you swing, the farther you're going to hit the ball and the more return you're going to get. And there's no reason that you can't be in my situation, as an executive for one of these companies. And now I'm looking up and the C-suite is right there, $12 billion a year company. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And because everybody that's there now, they're all going away very soon. And there's just not a lot of competition to backfill those seats.
That's right.
So it's, again, I'm already seeing it in the trades. I mean, when I have to explain some of the hourly rates for some trades across the country to my clients, they crap their pants, because they're like, oh my God. And it's like, yeah, well, there's no plumbers. They don't exist. What do you want from me? That you got to pay if you want to get them, you know what I mean? And, and you just keep seeing it. So, good for them. Good for everybody in the trades, good for the industry, and good for the people that want to make the most of it. So, Rusty, I think you're dead on. I am so glad that I was paying attention to my phone, because I haven't been able to pay attention to anything. To be honest with you, it was your handle that caught my eye. I was sitting there, might have even been in the toilet, speaking of plumbing, and I was like, a wealthy iron worker. I want to see what this guy's about. So I went in and I clicked in your content, and man, you're articulate. You have a wealth of knowledge, and I hope I can help you expand your platform and your reach, man. I want everybody to hear what you have to say. So if everybody's still listening, I go follow him, man. The healthy iron worker, the wealthy iron worker, the wealthy iron worker. You on any other platforms? I know you said you had the website.
Yeah, so I've got there's a LinkedIn, there's obviously a YouTube channel. There is Reddit. I'm also on Reddit, and all of them are the same handle, right? The Wealthy Iron Worker. But if you are intentional and you want to read some substantive stuff and you want to engage in dialogue, you can also go over to thewealthyironworker.com, and that's where there's articles, there's short form content, there's longer form content, and then there's series. Some of those articles become series, and I'm rolling out a leadership series. I'm dropping 1 article a month for the next probably year, actually, based on leadership from a perspective of the trades. There's a 9-part series dealing with budgeting over there, and talking, from the flavor of being in the trades and some things. There's other things. There's principles, the principle series. There's a lot of good content over there that, as I, find the time, quite frankly, to turn some of that into podcast episodes and the like, I'll, certainly do that. But there's never enough time in the day. There's never enough time in the day to do everything that you want. And so when people ask me, like, how are you able to do this? I'm like, this is my hobby. Like, I like to research, like to write, like to podcast. This is the hobby.
Same thing. This is what I do. This is, you're drinking beer, watching college football on Saturday night. I'm in here making content.
Yeah. And that's my biggest flaw, I think, is probably the short form content, because it takes a lot of time to actually make that stuff. And I'm over here, and I don't take any show notes when I do a podcast episode. I just kind of ramble on. I just bullet points to prompt. Not a problem. But the short form content, I know that's what catches people on. And I have seriously contemplated, reaching out to somebody and just being like, okay, look, I'm going to pay you this amount of money out of my pocket because I haven't made a dime out of any of it. But just turn this into multiple short form, because I just don't have the time to do it. And that's how you kind of, I don't want to say engage farm, but that's how you're going to, pique interest, if you will. And so, obscurity is the biggest enemy.
Well, you caught my eye. So, Rusty, I appreciate you coming on here. Like I said, wealth of knowledge. Go follow him at The Wealthy Ironworker on Instagram. I'm going to post this. This is actually going to go up tomorrow morning, first thing. And then I'm going to try to create some clips. And Rusty, just so you know, and this is where the industry's going, right? Because guys like Rusty and myself, we're just used to hard work. You put a ton of hard work in, you get the return. What we as the industry are getting better at doing, we need to get better at marketing, is leveraging AI tools. I use Opus Clip. I was paying a guy $10 a reel to make my reels. Now I use Opus Clip, OPUS Clip. And it can give you AI for B-rolls and stuff like that. But there's a ton of tools out there that are relatively cheap or free. Okay. That's coming to the industry. And I'm going to be posting some content soon about AI tools that are going to be making schedules for us and job hazard analysis for us, and suggesting pricing and alternates, and all these different kinds of things are coming to the industry, and they're coming fast. What they're not doing is they're not going to be taking people out of the field. Which is interesting. And who agrees with me on that is Sam Altman. He's the CEO for ChatGPT, OpenAI. Yep. So anyway, with that, again, Rusty, I appreciate you coming on. I like to try to keep it under an hour. So this is the Construction Mentor podcast. Again, catch the video feed on YouTube and audios on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Just type in Construction Mentor podcast and you should be able to find it. So Rusty, I appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate being on here.